This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Shaun Cole, and welcome to today's edition of the Pitstop, where you, the pit crew, are the real star of today's show. Actually, we are all the star of the Friday edition of the Pitstop, because with me today is none other than Billy Strange. How you doing, Billy?
Hello, hi. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm all pumped up. We are happy holidays to everybody. We are between Christmas and New Year's, between holiday season. We're in that holiday season where it's just all about fun, and so I'm pretty pumped up and excited. So, did you have a good Christmas or holiday?
I did. I bounced around a lot. We went to several different places, but yeah, it was good. We had lots of food, food. And yeah, we had a good time. So it was good.
Right on. Well, you know, with it being between the holidays, we are a little bit short on news. I mean, there's not a lot going on in the world of sim racing, with most people being on vacation, on break, spending time with family. That includes the companies that we all depend on for news. I mean, they're at home with their families as well. So not a lot to talk about. So on today's show, it's going to be a little different format, or a little different than normal. But if there's anything, you guys, the pit crew, if there's anything you think we need to talk about, if you have any questions of me or of Billy, today would definitely be the day to ask it, because we don't have a lot of news to talk about. But there are a few things, and we like to start the show off with what are you doing this week, or what are you up to? How are you enjoying yourself in the world of sim, Billy?
Well, it's been interesting. Let's see. So I guess I'll start off with, I did a review on the 934 Porsche in Race Room. So I did that. That was, I tried to put things on my channel that I like. And the only reason I covered that car is Race Room is the only company that actually gives me stuff to review. So I feel like, you know, if they're going to go out of their way to give me something to review, then whether I like it or not, I should review it anyway. And in short, the car feels odd to me. And so it kind of became this discussion of, you know, do I like Race Room, or do I like, you know, I can be critical of something and not have the same opinion for the whole sim. In this case, I don't like the car. I still like Race Room, just like I may complain about the tire model in some aspects for Assetto Corsa, but in general, I do like Assetto Corsa. So it sometimes maybe it doesn't come across as well as it should, but I just didn't think that this car, I don't know. I watched videos after I was done driving it, and it just doesn't seem, it body rolls too much, in my opinion.
Now, it looked like you're
No,
fighting a lot of understeer on entry. Was that the case?
and it's because of the weight transfer of the car, and the brakes are incredibly sensitive for that car because of the rear engine. The back end wants to come around, but everything just seems to be over exaggerated with that car. And I know that car is supposed to feel like that to a degree. I just think it happens to be a little too much. Again, it's not because I don't like old cars. It's not because I want something easy to drive. I can drive something without a spark plug and broken shocks. It doesn't mean that I like driving it. So I just felt like the car is not exactly correct. But if you enjoy that car, you know, people out there, more power to them.
Did you get a chance to see any of the comments or feedback that people are doing on it?
Yeah, it's very split. Some people really enjoy it, and some people are like, I don't think something's right. And I'm going to err on the side that I think it's just a little off. It's not majorly off. I think it's a little bit.
Okay.
So,
Awesome. What else did you get to drive?
then we talked about last time how I purchased Kartcraft. I got a chance to actually drive and play around in Kartcraft, and it's pretty good. Having raced karts myself, I feel like the kart either has hard tires on, or that the axle is soft, because there is a lot of oversteer. You know, with a kart, what it will teach you is to be very smooth with your hands. Don't be jerky with your inputs. Only turn as much as you need, which is realistic. That's, you know, in a kart, I had to get used to that coming from sprint cars.
Sure.
Even in big cars, you know, you put a lot more wheel into an actual car, where a kart, it's little smooth inputs. You're not erratic. And this definitely, if you try to steer too much, the back end, all kinds of weird stuff starts happening. So, but all in all, I enjoyed it. I played around with it a little bit, tried the leaderboard stuff, tried the AI, and for $20 where it's at right now, I actually think it's a good deal.
See, okay, so that's the opinion I've been waiting for. So I've been kind of holding out on that game and waiting for, there have been a handful of games I just haven't had the time to get to. And it's not a desire level, it's just a matter of time level. And I've been waiting for certain people to give me certain opinions saying, hey, it's worthy of the money and it's worthy of taking the time. So if you have limited time, like what do you get to go play? When do you waste time or spend the time? And that's great to hear because it means that now I want to go try it.
And especially because you've driven karts, it would be interesting to see what your take on it is. But again, if you're not used to racing karts, the line you take is slightly different than you would in a car, and making sure that your inputs are calm and very, just smooth. I think it would actually serve sim racers really well to get used to kartcraft, because I think you'll find that you'll get rid of a lot of, doing this on the wheel and sawing back and forth, which isn't necessary.
Was it the same thing on the pedal inputs?
No, okay. So that brings up an interesting topic. I think the brake's too sensitive. I had to dial back the brake sensitivity quite a bit. I think I'm like at 80% or something like that, which means you actually don't get full brake, which I would prefer a curve.
Right.
Rather, because if you do that with the throttle, it does the same thing. It takes away the top end or bottom end, one of the two of your throttle. I would prefer a curve for sensitivity rather than just limiting. I don't remember which end it limits. I think it limits the top end, but I'm not going to say that for sure. But the brake I feel is too sensitive. You can't get threshold braking really well without dialing back the sensitivity on the brake.
Right.
So I would like to see that adjusted, because I know in a kart, like going full bore and I go into a corner, I can hammer on the brake really hard without the cart taking off on me. And then this one, in this one, you can go flying down the straightaway, and if you breathe on the brake pedal too hard, it'll just turn you right around.
Right.
So I would like to see, I would like to see threshold braking and sensitivity adjusted in. But if you make the adjustment, it still works well.
Right. Were you in a shifter? So you had front brakes as well?
Tag. It's a tag.
So a full brake, 3-brake setup.
I don't know if a tag has full brakes or not. I don't remember. Okay. But yeah, it's just the single speed 125.
I mean, my
I'm
memory,
pretty sure it's the 125.
I really, funny enough, all the karting I did, I really, for the most part, only drove shifter karts. I never really did any of the regular moto stuff at all. Just went right to, ICCs. And my experience was, we had a brake bias. So, I mean, one of the first things, just like on Real Car, was I was going to go out and be able to make some bias adjustments. Because if I did lock up that rear axle, it was going to go ass first real quickly.
Right, and I did the same thing.
Especially on turn-in. Maybe not so much in a straight line, but on turn-in for sure.
Yeah, I ran a shifter, and that was one of my things, was the brake bias that I played with, because I could lock up the back end and spin out, and it's kind of like that. So I would like there to be a way to, I don't know, the braking just seems sensitive is all, I guess.
Right. Awesome. You get to drive any... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say the last thing that I drove was the Puma cars in Automobilista.
That's right.
Their update. Those are fun little cars to drive, and I will say this hands down, Automobilista is the best driving experience, and I'm not talking graphically, I'm talking the actual driving experience, bar none. It is the sim that I can jump into any car, and I can understand what the car is doing in just a handful of corners.
Right.
Doesn't mean I'm going to be the fastest, but what I'm saying is, I could do that in the real world too. I could jump into a car, and in a handful of corners, I could be the fastest. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I could do that in the real world too. I I could have a decent grasp of what the car is communicating to me. So in my opinion, Automobilista over any other sim communicates what the car is doing the best. It feels natural, it feels correct, and I've thought this ever since the catering came out in Automobilista.
You know, it's funny you say that because this is an area that, I mean, we could have a whole show on this, that one micro topic right there. Because as a sim racer, to me, now I'm not a setup guru, so maybe that is a factor here, but is it more about what you feel versus what you see, let's say on data? Like to me, the Sims, as much as I want to be a sim purist and act like they've done it perfectly, I accept that they haven't, which means it really comes down to what do I feel in my hands,
Right.
and how does it timing wise work with my hands, with my feet, with my mental expectations of what a car really does. And as much as I'd love to preach that it's all about physics, it's really, to me, about force feedback integration as much and maybe even more so than physics themselves. And I hate to say that because I'd like to be the purist that says, no, it's all about just physics and look at the raw numbers, it's doing exactly. It's like, well, forget all that. Because now we live for speed. I don't know if it still translates over time. But that was what you just said about Automobilista is what I always said about Live for Speed back in the day. And this is when people are still getting into licensed content. So
See, I've got to try. I've got to try Live for Speed.
Yeah, we're gonna have a Live for Speed day or night with our group and get everybody in and get everybody's thoughts and opinions. And I hope it holds up well in terms of it's been 5-6 years since I've played Live for Speed myself. Right on. You get to drive anything else?
No, that's it. I just I circle back to Automobilista, and the point that you made is just I am not a force feedback aficionado / whatever you want to call it, or a graphics snob. I care most about what the car feels like to drive. And I don't know what they've done, but like I said, ever since they did the update with the cater a minute, everything I try in that official content wise makes sense to me. I don't know what it is about the way it communicates, whether it's visually or through the force feedback. I don't think the force feedback is anything special. And I've actually, over the course of the year, lessened my force feedback as I've been going. I don't find force feedback as critical anymore.
Right.
So to your point, I've always argued that every sim has a human element in it for the developers. They're making that engine or that physics engine, whatever you want to call it. They made that. That is a group of people's interpretation of how physics work, right?
Right.
So you're always going to be missing items in there. And there's always what I've seen, especially when it comes to mod. People get very upset about when a mod gets out. Oh, well, they put this in there and they put this in there and it shouldn't be like this. I understand, but you're also assuming that the physics engine and everything that they've put into that sim is absolutely correct, which I hate to break it to people. There is no sim that has it absolutely correct. There isn't.
No,
there's always going to be something missing. You cannot, it's just not going to happen. So then it comes down to, how do you make that car feel correct in the game? That should be paramount. Should it do the correct lap times? Yes.
Sure.
Should it emulate what the real car does? Of course it should.
Right.
But it should also drive correctly. If they're just plugging numbers in and then just letting it fly,
right?
I think some do. That's not right, in my opinion.
I agree, and I hate to be blunt about it, but I've always called that the fudge factor. It's like, okay, so we have our physics engine. We've designed and modeled our car based on some certain values of real life, in terms of weight, balance. We've then put it on the track to somehow power it so that its lap times are going to be in the ballpark where it needs to be. And then, when we get the opinion of those humans, we need to throw in the fudge factor to now make that part drive right. And if they don't, you have something that doesn't feel right when you drive it as a sim racer. Fudge factor.
I would say that's a good, summary of what it should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all. That's what I'm. Go ahead.
I was gonna say. So, out of curiosity,
Producer
Shaun,
Brandon Waters there, everybody, just in case you didn't realize who
Hi, everybody.
A voice without a head.
That's right.
Continue, Brandon. Sorry.
What have you been up to this week, Shaun?
Okay, I've been busted.
I had to call him out.
I have not touched a sim in somewhere between 6 and 10 days at this point. I've lost track of all time. I had family and friends start coming in. My brother's birthday is 3 days before Christmas. So my whole world of Christmas starts 4 days before Christmas and just ended like yesterday. And now we're already at New Year's weekend. So I bought a VR recently. Everybody knows this. And I put my room in, what do they call it? Room scaling. So I literally took everything I could out of my room. I took my Sims and I pushed them all to the edges of the room and I set it up for room scale, and I had about 6 feet by 6 feet that I could run around in the middle. And I did nothing but play shooter games, and then I bought Wrench. Okay, this is if you are a sim racer and you don't know anything about cars, so when people are like, oh, you change out the rotor, and you're like, duh, I don't know, I just sim race, right? And you want to know, Wrench will teach you how to know what a car, how it goes together. By the end of playing it, you know what an A-arm is, you know what a bushing is, you know what a slide bolt is for a brake caliper, you know what a backing plate for a caliper, you know what a valve spring is. I mean, you can, they didn't model everything. It's not as detailed as Now, I actually am a mechanic, so I actually can do all that work.
Sure.
Which made it actually kind of funny, because one of the most popular VR games is like Job Simulator, and I found myself playing like 36 hours of Wrench. So I who the hell wants to work on cars for the most part? But there I am wrenching on cars for hours and hours and hours, and doing like the most mundane tasks at times, like just an oil change or a tire change, and then sending the car back out, and then it comes back in. You don't even see it drive. Like your whole experience is in the garage. Your car is on the lift. It goes up, it goes down. You can take everything.
So when the car goes out, does that mean that there's some sort of simulation happening that tells you if you've done something right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're hired on the and I guess this is semi sim racing related. They hire you on as like the apprentice mechanic. So Brandon, you remember the name of the car? I can't even remember the name of the car I've spent so many hours working on.
It is a Miata kit car that looks similar to an Exocet, but it has a body on it, and it's called the Catfish.
Catfish, that was it. So this Catfish, it's like a race car, so it's simplified car. There's no electrical system to deal with in the car, by the way. So that's something that, and I think there's more coming to the game, by the way. I think it's like very junior stage of what it could
the
be.
Early stages. Okay.
But it's very complete in the way it does. So they hire you on in the beginning. They just let you do basics, and the car comes in. You do an oil change. You change the transmission fluid. You change out the brake pads. You bleed the brakes.
Yeah, easy for you to say.
And then you send it out. So and this is like the rental car. So it's like a race shop that has a rental car that they rent out. And so it goes out and does whatever, autocross track. I don't know what it does. It just goes out. And then it comes back and you have a checklist of what's wrong. Complaints, the car's pulling one direction or brakes for grinding or whatever. And then a list of wear items. And you have to maintain the car. And in the beginning, it's a perfect car. After one or two rotations, it starts needing some secondary things like bushings or new shocks, or so you're constantly getting deeper into the game, and then finally I was starting to get to the point where I'm like seeing the end of the light of the tunnel. I'm like, I can't play this forever. I have to go back to like sim racing, and so I finally just took the whole car apart. I was like, screw it, and I just grabbed the engine and I put it over here and I just started taking the whole thing apart until it looked like a one of those diagrams, like a exploded view.
Yes. Yeah.
And The game's got an interesting feature. I'm going way too long on this, but with a gravity switch. So when you pull something off, it just floats in the air. And if you flip the gravity switch, everything falls on the floor.
Nice.
So when I did the exploded view, it was without the gravity. And I was able to leave all the parts like just where they were. I pulled all the valves out and I left them all out and then just took the rest of the block over here and went to the next stage and just pulled everything off. And then just kept moving it along. Anyway,
No
I did this and then I replaced every single part on the car except for like the chassis, which even shows where. And I think at this point I have 93% of the car and I'm waiting to find out if there's a next stage and I don't know if there is or isn't. But my VR week came to an end, or at least my room scaling week came to an end, and I had to shut it all down.
Right.
The other thing is my mom came in and tried VR, and my mom. Anyway, and much to my amazement, I thought it was going to be a 30-second, hey, Mom, just check this out so you can save Experience VR.
Sure.
My mom played Robo Recall for like 20 minutes and was like, I could do this all day long. And like my mom was loving the heck out of playing VR games, and I had her do the tilt brush painting
That's
thing.
great.
And so it's a lot more mainstreamable than what I thought. Like I didn't think she'd enjoy it. I thought she'd be very quick to be like, "Oh, that's great," and then just walk out of the room. But
I think it's when you put VR on, it's so intriguing, as long as you're not getting sick off of it, but it's so intriguing when you first put it on, like you just want to try all this different stuff with it, just to see how you interact, what the possibilities are, I guess is what I'm going at.
Yeah. And that's what I think for that game Wrench, and then I'll be done with that one. What I found so cool was the way it integrated your hands with the controllers and the way you operated tools. And sure, they simplified a lot of stuff. I mean,
Right.
But
Well, it's still a game,
but you were really going through it, and it actually made me think if this game was like built to the level of like a Chilton or a Haynes manual, that it could literally, like, you could really learn to work on your car.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, that you could, like that. You bring up the Haynes manuals. I don't know how many of those I picked up.
Yeah.
Over the course of the years. Like,
yeah, I if I kept them, I'd have a stack this tall because I've owned one for every car I've ever owned. But it'd be really cool. You know, I have a Datsun 240. It'd be really cool to be able to play this with a Datsun 2. I mean, I'm asking a lot, but it would be, I think it would be very sellable to be able to work on a Datsun 240, because then I could work on it. If I owned a project car, I could work on it virtually and then go downstairs and work on it for real. You know, and then like you could even integrate the important stuff in the manual, like your torque specs. You know, because when in the game, when you check on a thing, it shows you the torque specs for the bolts and things too.
Nice.
So yeah. Anyway, it was okay. Way too much on that.
Wrench is awesome. Bottom line.
Yeah, but I think it sounds cool.
We don't have any news.
Is it only for VR?
No. I think you can play it non-VR, but I didn't try. But I think you could just use the mouse to operate the hands, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm pretty sure it is non-VR. So.
Nice.
All right.
Sounds cool.
Well, we only had one tidbit of news. You want to tell people what was out there? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, this just happened to pop up on Race Department, so if you want to read the whole article, obviously hop over there. And there is a McLaren folder that happened to pop up in Automobilista. And Shaun, what do you say about McLaren?
McLaren is the slut of sim racing in the current day, trying to get the 650 and the 720 into just about every sim on planet Earth. If it's got tires and a car body, McLaren's going to try to get in there.
Marketing genius.
Yeah.
That's funny. I like it. But yeah, it was just interesting. Again, it's up on Race Department. You can actually look. They have the actual folder and stuff where it's hiding. And then what's funny is they actually have a post from their forums where Renato just goes, "Oops." So it's pretty funny, a little lighthearted, tongue in cheek there with the oops part of it. But I mean, it could be another thing. I mean, they said they were done putting stuff in it, and then all of a sudden they come out with an update, and then they come out with the Puma cars update. So maybe they're not totally done. Maybe they're it's interesting because they're not these are free updates as far as I can tell. I don't recall paying money for the Puma update or anything, so it is interesting that they're putting this stuff out without any money. So it'll be interesting to see if the McLaren becomes like paid DLC or if it's included content, if it even comes at all. Who knows what that little placeholder is? But I don't know. It's kind of fun to theorize and talk about.
Well, it's funny, you know, sim racers or gamers in general. It's like this is how a lot of companies get busted. You know, it's like Gran Turismo gets cars leaked because somehow, some way, they're in some like hidden shell spot, and somebody dives deep enough. You know, they you know, it just anyway. It's pretty funny, and it shows you something else about Riza, which is the ongoing support. And this maybe we'll circle back to this thought, but. You know, the ongoing support. We know they're working on their next title because they've been pretty public about it. But their support for the title lives on very strong. I mean, years and years and years after release. So.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's interesting, especially when they said they actually ended official support for it, and yet we keep getting these little tidbits coming out. So yeah, just kind of fun to theorize what they're talking about. And somebody, the Menace actually says they also added. I know who you are. They also added a force feedback profile named F1.
Oh,
so who knows what that is?
Interesting. McLaren F1. Is that what we're talking?
I don't know. I don't know.
Leave it to sim racers. They're gonna figure it out. If you leave teases, they're gonna figure it out.
Yeah. Well, tinfoil hat time too. I mean, could that? You never know. Maybe it could be the form of an Easter egg.
Yeah.
Or cheap marketing.
Well, and it could be something that they're putting stuff in this for the next title. Like, you don't know how much they play around with things for the next title that's coming too. So who knows? I'm excited for whenever they come out with something new. Like I said earlier, I enjoy the hell out of Automobilist. I know graphically it's not very impressive. I don't think it looks that bad, but I sure do like driving stuff in that sim.
Sure. Yeah.
So I would be okay with the McLaren.
Thank you, Babs, for the donation.
Yeah.
Oh yes, thank you.
Babs, you rock. You know, that kind of takes us, so, you know, we're already at 30 minutes for the show, believe it or not, and we only had one topic of news. I love that. That is so beautiful to me, because that is the point of this show, and why Fridays are so much different than Monday and Wednesdays. But with everything you talk about, it really takes me to, you know, the final part of our show, where we just kind of talk about a few different topics. But Automobilista supported that title. You just drove R Factor 2. You just did the GT3 cars. Or no, I'm sorry.
I actually haven't touched those cars.
You acquired. You acquired.
I did acquire the pack, yes.
And now there's news that it, in fact, was missing the Aston Martin.
Yeah, so I bought that thing, and let's go in the Wayback Machine. Last Friday we talked about the last post that we did on R Factor 2 was where we found the Twitter post saying introducing the GT3 Challengers pack, and then the tweet below it talking about the Aston Martin. I was incredibly excited about the Aston Martin. And so paying attention to when it came out, I bought the pack, not really understanding or seeing that the Aston Martin is not included with that pack. I did not see and or understand that. It is in the tweet right after the tweet that we covered, which I never saw. I mean, I don't know. I
does that make it the fine print
about it?
Does that make it the fine print when it's under?
Right. And it, you know, when it says as it's that the one before where it's talking about the Aston Martin as it's that fresh, approvals haven't come in yet, so you'll have to settle for this nice logo for now. But it doesn't communicate that we're going to release the other cars with, even if this doesn't get approved, which I don't understand why you would do, number one. But number two, I don't recall seeing that in any of the notes that I went through. It's very possible I just missed it. But yeah, I purchased the pack and then went, oh man, the Aston Martin isn't in here. And then I had to like actually go through other stuff. I went back to Twitter, went to a couple places, and oh, it didn't get approved. Well, why the heck did you release the pack then? I don't know. The one car that is the car that I wanted to drive. I mean, I know the McLaren was new, but the Aston Martin was also new, and that's the one I wanted to drive. And I was like, man. So I got a little salty, and I haven't driven the other cars yet.
Now, SimRacing 604 says the licensing has been finished and that the Aston Martin is under final review with the manufacturer. So maybe it will be added fairly quickly.
Well, technically, licensing is not finished until they approve it.
Okay, that makes sense. Sure.
Working with iRacing, I in the past, I know that nothing is set in stone until it goes through the approval process. So they can, if they don't like that car, it could never come out.
Sure.
It could never come out. Just because you have the licensing agreement doesn't mean you actually have the license to put out the car. So if for some reason they absolutely don't like the way the car is represented, whatever, that car can actually never be released.
Right. And
well, in comparison,
604. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to say, in comparison to McLaren, let's hope Aston Martin doesn't play hard to get.
Right.
Well, no, but if licensing has been inked, let's say, pending approval, now I don't think they'd ink it and let the approval be are we going to go for it or not? It's going to be, does this represent us or not? And if you represent us, then we're good to go. If not, you're going to need to go back to the drawing board and work on that human side. We were talking about it earlier on. When those people try it, see it, smell it, feel it, hear it, it needs to make them happy or they're not going to give it the thumbs up. And if they're not happy, they're going to send you back to the drawing board with certain things like, well, that's not quite our exhaust note, or the car doesn't oversteer on entry like that. Or, I don't know to what degree they'd test it. But...
Right. As far as I understand, it's typically visual, making sure that the car doesn't do anything goofy looking on the track. So no ridiculous looking ride heights that you can't do,
right.
Weird things to the car. Some, R Factor 2 doesn't have this issue in particular, but there are some sims that, don't like certain things being on the car. I know older sims, that was a bigger deal. But the fact that you can mod stuff now in those sims, it's not quite as big a deal. And, they want to make sure it sounds right. They're protecting their brand. And
right.
The likelihood that it will never be released is very, very small. It's going to be released. It's just I was not under the impression that it wouldn't be in the pack. That's all.
Sure. It just felt like that was part of it. They made a big deal about the pack, and then sure enough, there was actually an incomplete pack. And then I'm assuming that when it comes out, that it would be included free if you bought the whole pack versus the a la carte.
It'll once it gets approved, they'll put it out, and it'll just automatically, if you've bought the pack already, it'll automatically download. So I'm gonna wait till that car comes out before I go through the cars, and if there's stuff in there that I like, then I'll probably do a small review on those cars. But yeah, I was bummed. I wanted to drive the Aston Martin.
I hear you. One of the thoughts that comes to my mind, with it being December 28th, in some ways I'm not a New Year's resolution kind of guy, because I feel like if you want to start something, you don't necessarily need a calendar date any day. I could start my New Year's resolution today. I don't have to wait for the first. I don't have to add the pressure of having some calendar involved. Like, if you want to be better, do things. Anyway, the reason I bring that up, I'm always trying to motivate people. I'm trying to always get people to be better, and I'm usually pushing everybody else as a secret subliminal way of pushing myself. And I don't know, with it being the end of the year and the new year coming, I just kind of think about, I take my sim racing pretty seriously. And, this is my number one hobby. And, I think once you get to a certain age where you're, whether it's that you have family and kids, or whether you're working a career seriously, when we were kids, we got to play sports like they're the number one thing in our lives.
Sure.
I mean, I fondly remember being in my youth, and the only thing that mattered to me was soccer. That's it. Nothing else mattered. and I could focus 100% of my energy on my sport because that's what I was all about. And now, as life has caught up and these other factors get involved, our favorite things in life sometimes, I'm not trying to undermine people's family or jobs, but our favorite things in life end up being nothing better than a hobby tier in our world, in our time. And it gets hard to motivate sometimes. It gets hard to stimulate or create those kind of goals that we had in our youth. I mean, again, when I played soccer, I had goals. Like if I knew that I ran, the 100 and, in 9 seconds, my goal was next year to run it in 8.5. Or if I knew that at the 3/4 mark of the game that I was starting to fight a little endurance issues, it's like, well, in the off season, I'm going to work on that. Or if I knew that,
Sure.
Certain aspects of my game needed improvement, I would make those improvements. And this was everyday activity when it's your number one. When it's your hobby, and I've done this, whether you're talking cycling, golf, whether you're talking sim racing, sometimes I find that we get lazy. We do it. It's our hobby.
Complacent.
Yes. And I don't know if that's good enough for me because of the competitor in me. And, I guess what I'm getting at, and my whole point is, with it being the New Year's, are there things that we can do as sim racers to hone our skills at that hobby level? Just like a golfer might take this as an opportunity to get a coach. And maybe if you were into cycling, maybe now is when you do some other type of training because you want to improve your game in some way. Are there things that we can do? Can we create new routines with the New Year's to be a better sim racer? I'm wearing my endurance shirt for last year's endurance team, and we have our first race coming up on the 19th, and I'm like, wow. Here it is, the New Year's. I took a week off playing VR, blah, blah, blah. Now we're into the New Year coming. I want to be better this year than I was last year. And if I was a 8th place driver this year in my series, I want to be a 5th place or a 3rd place driver this season. Or if I'm a 3rd place driver, actually I look at my racing. I'm sorry, I got to get off and let other people talk here. I'm a little disappointed in my speed last season in the Mazda, for example, was a top 3 driver, I believe. And yet my results were a 5th to 7th place driver. So for some reason, I was not taking the average speed that I had and getting those results. Part of it through qualifying, part of it through strategy, and part of it through just simple mistakes. But anyway, I don't know what my New Year's resolutions for sim racing are, but I mean, does anybody else out there? I mean, I'm talking to you guys, I'm talking to Billy, I'm talking to Brandon. Any of you guys out there, you guys look at this as an opportunity to be better at our hobby, our sport, our favorite thing to do, and our competitive need for life?
Yeah, I don't. I usually make goals as I go along. So, for example, I remember when I really, kind of launched my channel last November, December. And one of the goals was, to do some more online racing, which I did. And then it became, when I was running with you guys, it became, I would just like to be top 10. I felt like when I first started, if I could get a top 10 running with you guys, because I felt like you guys were fast enough that I should be kind of where I'm at as a top 10. And then all of a sudden it became, all right, top 7, top 5. And then it was like, I think I can compete for a win, but it's only because A, I sent those benchmarks for myself, but B, I tried to learn from you guys and I tried to study. And, New Year's kind of gives us the kick in the pants sometimes to do something. But it's not something we should always wait for. Like if I would have waited to be like, all right, now I'm going to be a top 5 driver in the league that I'm in this year, but I'm going to wait till New Year's to really try hard. Like that doesn't, it doesn't work. So, sometimes New Year's happens and we've been thinking about it and it's the kick in the pants to get us to actually go, you know what, I'm going to do this. But other times we also need to and whatever it is, some people do this hobby just to have the experience of driving a car around a track. They don't really care about being competitive, and that's fine. Other people, the purpose of this to some degree is to race. So whether you're racing offline or online, I think setting those goals for yourself. And I think the biggest thing, I don't know, I'm not sure what my goal would be right now, except to keep improving on my understanding. I mean, I would like to think that I've gotten better in all aspects of my driving, but I would still like to improve, road course racing and some of the oval stuff as well. I think I could be better at. But yeah, I just try to pay attention and learn all the time.
I see a random call sign mentions getting to a 3K I rating. I like that because I always loomed at like 25, 2600, 24 to 600, 2600. And
Tyson wants to go pro.
Yeah, go pro in dirt.
I
saw
cool.
someone say that. But Billy, you said something that kind of touches upon my thinking, and I do it a little more actively than just New Year's resolutions. I'm just looking at maybe this is an opportunity for a larger one. But getting back to what I was saying about back in my youth when it was all I cared about or thought about, I made those changes, on fractional amounts of time. Sometimes I make a change during a practice, one single practice. It was very active, and yet I find in my sim racing career I'm much more complacent. And I need to think about goals. If I want to, instead of being a 5th through 7th place driver, if I want to be a top 3 driver, I have to analyze what was missing. Like, what were my failures? If I really believe that I was a top 3, well, then why didn't I? Because I have to find those flaws, mistakes, errors, and correct them. And they weren't all driving errors. Again, strategy, is a big factor in racing. And you did touch upon something else, and I put a lot of pressure on people to race. But, there is such a thing as a sim driver, not a sim racer. And they're here to experience the automotive world. And I think in the real life world, there are people who'd love to drive a race car, and they have no intention of racing, don't even want to race a car, but they would like to drive a race car. And I think there is a difference, and I think they're both great. And, great, I've done both in my career of sim racing even, but it's not everybody has to take it super seriously. That's what I'm getting at too.
Yeah, there's always levels, and so I would also put this out there. If you're part of the community, and if there's something that I can help somebody with to achieve their goal, like I don't know what that would be, but if there's something you think that I can help you with, I'm more than happy to help people. You can ask the people in my Discord. I feel like I know setting up, a sprint car really well, so I share those setups, but I also have, I think, a decent understanding of setting up other cars as well. And I give that information when I can. I give tips on, if somebody's struggling with a driving line, or even, one of the things that gets overlooked a lot is just setting up your sim rig in a manner that benefits you the most. And I'm not talking like settings, like a setup for a car. I'm talking like in-game settings and, wheel and pedal placement, monitor height, how far the monitor should be away from you. There's no correct one. I mean, you could make an argument that there is, but it's so personal. Like, as long as you're okay with it, then it's fine. But if somebody needs help doing that, I'm more than happy to help people if I can. So I would say keep that in mind for people that are making those goals. Like, if you want to come out and race, but you're nervous about it and you're worried about taking people out, start with a league, or maybe just get in some practice rooms. And there are people out there, not just myself, but we have a good community. There are people out there that are willing to help. Just don't be afraid to ask. And I don't consider somebody asking, why would you only increase tire pressure by a half pound? That's not a silly question. The person asking it might think that's a silly question,
right?
But it's not. It's not a silly question.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to learn and if you're trying to improve, I don't think that there's any such silly question.
Well,
I ask questions all the time.
I think as sim racers as a whole, we love what we do and we love the community and we're here to race, right? It's not about being the only one out there on track or not having other people out there with you. You want people to race with and to be your similar skill level because it's no fun either, getting your doors blown off or being the guy getting blown out the back of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I would rather, I've said this about a lot of the hobbies that I do. I mean, when I was in the sprint car, I don't necessarily want this to happen, but I feel like when I, go race slot cars or I do sim racing, it's a little different. I don't mind helping somebody. I would rather have a good race and finish second or third than to just completely blow everybody out of the water. I would much rather have, in fact, I wouldn't mind if we were running the sprint car and we have a group of guys that are just as fast as me and I finish seventh. Like if we're having a good race, that's what I want. I want a good race. I don't want to blow people out of the water. And, if now I'm competitive, if there's something on the line, then obviously I don't want other people to win. If there's a prize, if there's like $5,000 on the line, then screw you. I want you all to suffer and I want to win. But but if we're just having a league race or a fun race or whatever, I want people to be competitive. So again, I would say, whoever you're comfortable in asking for help, don't be afraid to ask.
Sure.
That's nice.
Yeah. And a lot of people are going to help out.
Well, I've got a couple community questions and some personal questions if you guys want to move on to that.
Yeah.
If you're done with your resolutions.
Yeah.
Real quick one. Sonic Worm asked in chat, for you guys, which sim do you recommend for server stability? And I'm going to assume that means multiplayer stability. As far as coming into it, he's a GT Sport driver, so you might take that into account with your answer. I personally would probably say iRacing. He also says that which should be the first PC sim he tries coming from GT Sport, which would make me say not iRacing. But what do you guys think?
Such a contradiction. Go ahead, Shaun.
I know.
No, I think you handled it pretty well there, Brandon. I absolutely, hands down, multiplayer stability, racing, competition side of sim racing. There's no sim on planet Earth like iRacing. I just don't have anything else to say. Nobody else does anything even close. For that aspect of it. Coming into the PC side of sim racing, coming from Gran Turismo Sport, I would probably start on the path of Assetto Corsa. I think that it's going to be transferable driving model wise, and it's going to take you towards running at the highest level of PC sim racing. So that would be probably my suggestion. Or if they're really competitive, they're watching this show, then chances are that's the path. I mean, I might say Project Cars 2 in lieu of getting into it, because you get so much content and so much flair, so maybe it's going to be an easier bridge to the PC than from GT Sport, but chances are they've already played Project Cars anyway. So anyway, that would be my 1-2 punch.
Billy?
Which sim do I recommend for server stability? None. is that an answer?
Sure.
With the nature of online, I don't know. I think iRacing is the easiest to set up, but with a little bit of watching tutorials, you can really set any of them up. What has the most vibrant and largest online community? Probably iRacing. I mean, I know Assetto Corsa's got on the PC has still got a lot of people playing online. R Factor 2. I mean, and then kind of getting to the next question, which would be the first PC sim to try? What are you looking for? Because in my opinion, each sim does something different.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a GT Sport driver, are you doing the official online races? Is the ranked thing, what really is what you really like about GT Sport, or is it the fact that you can do online and offline racing? You can race with AI, and you can do a little bit of online racing with your friends. So that kind of would steer my answer. If you're really into the ranked multiplayer part of GT Sport, then I would probably, even though it's, and this all depends on your budget too, right? If you don't have a lot of money to spend, I would not suggest doing iRacing.
Sure.
But if money really isn't a concern and you're looking for the best or one of the best ranking systems possible, then I would tell you to go give iRacing a shot. If you want to have an online and offline experience, then you can take your pick from, R Factor 2. Race Room, I think, is actually picking up some momentum with online stuff. They have a Discord that you can actually find leagues to run in. Assetto Corsa is still a very viable title for online and offline racing, with the mod support that they have going on right now. They've got a lot of stuff that makes Assetto Corsa still appealing. Automobilist, I would tell you, has one of the best offline experiences you can run, barring, again, if, coming from GT Sport, graphically, that may not be such a good suggestion, but for the pure driving aspect, and it has good AI, and just a good driving experience, Automobilista. So it just depends on what you're looking for.
Sure.
That's a good answer.
Random call sign brings up a relevant point here, talking about SRS incorporated into Assetto Corsa and Race Room.
True.
More so in Assetto Corsa, because Race Room kind of has their own thing too.
Right.
But with SRS, if SRS had a lot more numbers, then their ranking system would start to rival iRacing's. Right now, I think it just comes down to membership and total numbers. Also, I don't know if you get as much. I don't know, and I could be out wrong here. It feels like SRS is a little more leaguey than the ranking system of iRacing.
I'm not a huge fan of the ranking system in SRS. It serves a purpose, but I like it less than iRacing. But again, if you're confined to a budget, then that would definitely be the way to go, because they do have a ranking system.
Yep.
It does work okay, and you're not going to spend the money that you're going to spend on iRacing. Right. And again, you can have mods and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, SRS is free. Race Room right now is $50. You can get Assetto's been down under $10 if I remember right, or definitely under 20.
It definitely goes on sale, so that, and it's even at $40 still, it's well worth your money for Assetto Corsa.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, thanks for that answer, guys. Hopefully that helped out as far as Sonic's Worm question goes. Also, we got a question from Tim. We know him as Spatial Dragon in chat. And he's been having an issue connecting to RaceNet lately on Dirt Rally. And to the point that it seems like it's not saving his progress, or it's affecting the functionality of his game, which, after you put all that time in, racing the different series, building your content, getting your cars, unlocking all your stuff. I've actually had personal experience lately with issues in Assetto Corsa with the UI interface, and I don't know if it's mod related or if it's an actual problem with hardware interfacing with the software as far as the display goes, but it kind of brings up the point of when a developer starts developing a new title and they officially, quote unquote, abandon support of a previous title, which is the case here in Dirt Rally and Assetto Corsa. Both those developers have made that statement. Does it change your outlook on the future content from that developer? And in this case, Dirt Rally 2.0 or ACC. What do you guys think?
That's a tough one. It's a tough one because you really, to be fair, have to look at it from both sides of the coin. I mean, you have the consumer or our side of it, which is, hey, we paid our $50 or whatever. And how long, back in the day, before multiplayer, before online, a game cartridge, I'll use the word cartridge to give you guys an idea of the era I'm talking about.
Back in my day.
You bought a title, it was for life. If I pulled my 2600 out today, every part of it would still work. But in the world of multiplayer, DLC, downloadable titles, forget DLC, it's changed that quite a bit. So from the consumer side, I mean, shoot, I do believe if I own something, it should work forever, unless I break it. But in the case of most physical products, that's the case where I can break it. In the case of a software, they break it, not me, or time breaks it. And on the flip side, though, companies has to make a certain amount of money to survive. They have to make a certain amount of money to innovate. And, it's like, in the world of Sims, they're not making something simple. Like, let's just take this pen, for example. If I make pens, well, if this pen's going to be fine next year, then I can reduce the cost of making it. I can refine the process to make it cheaper, and that's how I can make it more profitable or sustain my company. In the case of anything that requires innovation, you're talking about a lot of money spent in tech, a lot of money spent in R&D. And in order for us to get those next-gen Sims, when people want night-to-day transitions, weather effects, deeper level of physics, that comes at a cost. And at some point, if those companies are spending too much money and time supporting the old, it's going to prevent the new. So it's
Right.
not an easy answer, is what I kind of spent a long time defending what I'm about to say, I guess. I don't know the right amount of time. I mean, it seems like game cycles right now are about 2 years, maybe 3, depending on the sim or title, 2 to 3 year span. And I think at some point in the modern era, that's probably about what you can expect. I mean, if they're going to create a new Madden the next year, well, then they have no vested interest in the previous version anymore. But also from the company, they have to weigh the loss, because people are going to get ruffled feathers and feel ripped off. My brother plays last-gen games, so to him, that would be the kiss of death from a company, because he's going to play last year's version anyway. So if that just gave him 12 months less life on his game, he'll be outraged if they pulled the cork.
Sure.
It's tough, man. I don't know. I think 2 to 3. I think right now 3 years. If you got 3 years out of a $50 title, so to speak, you could probably, in my opinion, consider that to be about right. Even though it sounds kind of not cool.
Yeah. What do you think, Billy? Do you agree with Shaun, or do you have a different opinion?
I would say, how about it gets supported till it's not broken? I don't know.
Well, time can break a sim.
Yeah, I don't. I think that's
Especially
more
in a PC based. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I just think that's more of a user thing than anything. I'll give this example. Dirt 4 came out, and there were things that I felt that weren't right with it, and they never really did anything to address that. And they literally said in the stream that they weren't going to be able to fix that stuff. To me, that's a problem. If we're talking Assetto Corsa, it also you have to understand what the title is. And if it's a service like an iRacing or a race room, then yes, I expect there to be those updates. Even GT Sport, because they are putting on races, I expect there to be updates to correct anything that gets broken. In the terms of Assetto Corsa, I never felt that way. As long as you're fixing the stuff that was broken to begin with. Once you get beyond that point, if you release an update and it breaks something, then please fix that. And if you fix that and you're never releasing another update, then I don't expect you to continue to support that title. Does that make sense?
Sure, but when you say broken, you mean something that literally isn't working. This isn't like complaint about the tire model or the handling model or...
Yeah, or like, at the time, let's say they release a patch and it breaks something in the menu. Please fix that.
Yeah.
Don't leave that unattended. But if it's was fine and then, a year out, something like that becomes an issue, I don't know that I'm going to require the developer to sit there and go back through it, especially when they, in theory, moved on to another title.
Well, and the other thing, sometimes, again, I say our computers or time breaks our sims. If you had a sim and it was working and everything was fine, and you updated your graphics driver because you want to play the latest, greatest game. That
or
required,
Windows 10.
Yeah, or Windows, or, It could be so many different updates that broke the game, and it's like, well, if you left your computer the way it was when it was all working, it didn't break. And they didn't break it, and they didn't fail to support it either. In the case of what Tim's talking about, he's talking about the RaceNet, which is the whole matchmaking service back-end side of the title. I remember when NASCAR pulled the servers for, Papyrus pulled the NASCAR servers way back when, and it was like, oh my God, that's the end of an era, But that had been 7-8 years after release that happened, and that was paving the way for iRacing too, by the way. But that's tough, man. I don't know, because
I don't. Yeah, I just feel like if the developer didn't break it, and as long as they fix the things that they did break, we can point at Project Cars 2, right? There are still things that are broken in that sim, in my opinion. That should still be supported then. Until you're all done fixing those issues, you should not be abandoning that title and just jumping ship onto your next one. And I think that more than anything is what burns a lot of people. Assetto Corsa, or Kunos moving from Assetto Corsa to Competizione, I don't think that's that big a deal.
Right.
They supported that title for quite a while.
Lots of updates.
Got it. Yeah, got it. Lots of updates. Got it to a point where they felt like this is Assetto Corsa, this is it, and now we're going to move on. Kind of like what Automobilista, even though Automobilista, Ritz's keeps throwing those things out there for their sim. It's essentially the same thing. I did not expect those small updates to the sim. I know that they're working on whatever next title that they're going to do. So I don't expect them to be messing with that. Now, in AMS's case, with these, if there's something that did break, then I do expect them to fix that, since they did release an update. But if they had never released an update, and later on down the line, let's say Windows 10 does an update and it breaks the game, I don't know that that's their fault.
Yeah.
And that they should be held responsible to fix that.
Yep.
It's perfect example. I bought my brother a brand new graphics card for Christmas, and it broke iRacing. It literally broke iRacing for him.
You just didn't want him to beat you in a dirt race again. I know what it was.
Well, yeah. I gotta win. I will wreck my grandmother to win. And
there you go.
but it's just, it was working fine before. I can't really fault iRacing for that. It's something we've done. So now I have to figure out how to fix it.
Well, that's fantastic input on that. I appreciate it. It's a hard thing to answer, you know what I mean, as far as that perspective goes.
Sure.
And it's at some point, you got to look at it from the business side. There's got to be a crossover point when, even selling the game at $5, there's not enough new people and revenue coming in to justify the expense of doing that. But for me personally, from the customer side of things, like you were talking about unexpected updates for an old title, it's like, from a customer side, I appreciate that. It actually makes me feel valued as a customer, and like hey, here's a little something. I don't expect a massive DLC pack, that takes a ton of development cost, but just little things here and there makes me feel appreciated,
Sure.
So.
Before we close this topic out, I just want to say one other thing, getting back to the back in my day. Back in the day, I think titles came out a little more complete than they do now. And I think that there's a little more rush to production, or rush to to sale and then patch it later. But back in the day, if you got 3 significant patches to a title, you could consider yourself lucky. But again, I think the game came out a little more polished, But
Well,
again,
that's just a whole nother topic. Is this is what we've deemed as acceptable, on the consumer end. We've deemed this acceptable, and you can make the argument that we did get games back in the day that were broken and that couldn't be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can make the argument that, well, now this has allowed developers to release. I mean, what's the new one that's having the big issue? Atlas, where it was basically a reskin of Ark. It's just like, and it's completely busted in the whole 9 yards. So I think to a degree, it's technology and evolution, but at the same point, we as the consumer have allowed some of this. So it's hard to say where that line is. And as much as I would like to say it needs to be complete, it should be, there should be nothing that breaks it. That's probably not an actual reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of these topics, it's real easy. We got to try and walk that line of, okay, we can go on and on into deeper subjects, but trying to stay focused to Tim's specific issue and the question that he posed. We'll do our best to stay on topic with that. But I've got one more thing, and we've been trying to cover this. And
wait, yeah, I was just gonna say this has been Brandon's one thing for quite some time.
Yeah, and finally we're getting to it. And actually, somebody else proposed this, so unfortunately, I don't have who did, but it may have even been Billy when we were first talking about the concept of this. But yeah, there you go. So everybody, Billy Strange has a question for Billy Strange, and Shaun, and that's, what is an item on your rig that you couldn't live without? And we're talking hardware. And conversely, what I want to know is, what is an item on your rig that you could live without and why? So obviously we all understand, we're sim racers. We have to have a steering wheel. We have to have a pedal set. But what about the peripheral stuff? Shifters, handbrakes. At what level, do you find certain pedals acceptable? So, and I know you both have different opinions on this, but I'm curious what what you guys actually feel on this. And this, Jesse Fox actually kind of proposed a question to Shaun via email. I don't know if he's received it yet, but this can be a dangerous question because it kind of borders on that. And that's, the level of equipment you feel you need. Mm-hmm. High end, always better. So I kind of want to stay away from that because I feel like that's a topic for another day. But for you guys personally, what do you feel you absolutely have to have on your rig, and what don't you need?
You want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Shaun.
All right. Because this is one we bounced around for a show topic for quite some time, I've actually thought about it a lot and revisited it, and I'm actually going to blow you away with what I think. My number one requirement in sim racing is frame rate. And it's not just frame rate. It's frame rate with eye candy. I have a friend who sim races who turns like grandstands off and all the extra crap. And he's like, I don't need any of that. And I'm like, man, I totally need all that because it's part of the experience. It's part of my peripheral view for timing. I need my machine to perform at top level. Yes, I can sit here and tell you all day other components that I need. But I can race with just about any sim racing component made. But I need my machine running crystal clear, super smooth. And that's what really gives me a timing advantage over those who do not have performance machines. That's my I can't live without. And that part of that is having triples or VR running at that level, whatever your experiences. It's not single. I'm talking, my biggest need is full-blown kick-ass graphics running at super fast, super good timing. As far as what I can live without, I can totally live without an H-pattern shifter. Sorry, Tim Chitwood. I'm not gonna. We could do a whole show on my thoughts and opinions on clutches and shifter and integration into Sims.
I'll add it to the list.
We could do that all day long. But I just, as much as I can even run a better lap sometimes with a shifter, and I learned that on the Mazda hot lap that I was playing around with that. I think my fastest lap was with no auto clutch and an H pattern. But my amount of mistakes, and a lot of the mistakes are flaws in the sim, not me. Just, I can't do it. It's just, no, take it away. You can take every handbrake off for that matter as well. Yeah, there are a handful of games it works out. But for the most part, I'm a road racer, so I don't need a handbrake. But that seemed a little obvious. So, yeah, I'm going to go with H pattern. If you took my H pattern away, I wouldn't cry. Yeah, Stu. Right. Sorry, Stu. He wouldn't like to hear that either.
Yeah, Stu and Tim are H pattern shifter fans in the house.
So what can't I live without? I would say a good brake pedal. All things being equal, let's say, you know, like I like your frame. I didn't even think of frame rate, but let's say frame rate is standard. There's, you know, I'm not gonna throw frame rate out the window. Let's say that even goes down to 30 frames. Let's say that. I will take a better brake pedal over any other piece of equipment I have. Any, 60 frames a second, 120 frames a second. I don't care. I am very sensitive to what the brake is like, and it doesn't, and I'm not saying that it needs to be a super expensive brake pedal. It just needs to give me the correct feel. So whether that's, the T3PA Pros, actually, once you get those dialed in, that's actually not a bad brake pedal. It's actually pretty decent with that conical brake mod in it.
Yep.
It's actually, I can drive with that.
Yep.
I could live with driving with that pedal. I prefer a load cell, but I don't have to have a load cell. I have to have a brake that feels correct to me. So that's the thing that I just can't do without.
That was going to be my answer, by the way. I feel the same way. I do feel the same way.
Yeah. If you want, in my opinion, if you want something, the one thing that you need to work on to get better at sim racing and better lap times is braking. Everybody can smash a throttle pedal. Everybody, in my opinion, for the most part, can learn throttle control. For me, it's actually the hardware side of it is finding a brake pedal that you connect with, whether it be potentiometer, some sort of rubber brake mod, load cell, hydraulic, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, just that you click with it.
Yep. I remember back in the day I even used the original brake mod, the Nixon brake mod for the G25, I think it was, pedal set. And it was just it was an eraser. One of those rubber schoolyard square erasers when you were a kid, back in my day. And it went inside the spring. And it was kind of had the same effect as the conical mod on the T3PA.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just enough. It was enough to take what was useless, a G25 brake pedal. Useless pedal. So when you're talking that topic... and it made it
terrible.
But it made it totally usable, and count. You could count on it. But I agreed. I think that the brake pedal might be the most important part of all. Some would argue that, I think, but I agree with you, Billy. That was going to be my answer.
To the point of what could I live without, since you already touched on two things that I think are kind of obvious that we can't, we could live without, i.e. H pattern, i.e. handbrake. I would say clutch pedal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need a clutch pedal. I mean, I like doing heel toe stuff. Do I need it? No. I don't need a clutch pedal.
Let me put it to you this way on that thought. So a lot of the super duper high end pedal sets, which might be somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000, come as a 2 pedal set or a 3 pedal set, and
right.
The difference in price is really expensive versus just obscenely expensive in order to get that third pedal.
Always drinking.
I like that. Really expensive versus obscenely expensive. Just absolutely ridiculously. expensive.
Versus, sorry, little Johnny, you're not going to college. Yeah.
That's right.
So if you're buying the high end, though, you're kind of always thinking you just buy the absolute max. But if you were going to buy a super high end set of pedals, would you make getting the clutch pedal part of the requirement, or is that like, hey, I can save $500 maybe, and not get a clutch?
Right. Yeah. I again, we're not talking like, what breaks the immersion, because obviously not having an H pattern for an old car and not having a clutch, or if you're doing rally or something that requires a handbrake, obviously you want those things. But if I had to point out something, all the Sims have an auto clutch feature. I can use flappy pedals. I can use a button for the handbrake if I really want to. So, those are things that I could live without. I mean, technically, I guess I could live without force feedback.
Ooh, whoa! Back in my day.
God, shots fired.
I mean, seriously, I to a degree, I think force feedback is a phony notion. I think it. Well, that's a whole other topic.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we're in next Friday.
Yeah,
Next Friday.
I like force feedback. I'm not saying I don't like force feedback. I'm just saying that there's probably a lot going on in force feedback that I think is phony. Anyway.
And to finish this topic off, and very relevant point made in chat, and I have a slightly different take on it, but double clutch mentioning and all my twist on it. If you lost a race this week or last week or whenever, there's at least a 50-50 chance that the guy you lost to was on just totally crap hardware, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was on a G25. There's who knows, or pedals that were falling off his rig. It's amazing what the fast guys can use, and I think it's amazing what the fast guys can win with. I'll just leave it at that.
And that's
I see you guys in the chat. Come on, in the new. But I'm telling you, I ran my fastest lap when we did the iRacing thing, the endurance thing, without force feedback.
Yep.
And I think people depend on force feedback too much. I've been running with, when I started going quicker, I hate to tell people this, I turned my force feedback way down.
Yep. No, I've never had high. If you need proof is in the pudding, turn your force feedback too high, and you'll see how much it slows you down. So then you have to wonder, if it's doing it when it's too high, is it just as a result of it's too high, or is it always slowing me down? Just to what degree? We got topics and plans.
Should we save this for next week? Should we actually do a force feedback discussion for next week?
We'll have to make that a topic.
I don't mind people stewing over what I say.
Sure.
So why don't we leave it there and let those last thoughts and shots fired just kind of settle and simmer for a week, and maybe we'll bring some of this up in next week's show. But I don't know. Anything else in your guys' mind? I think we pretty much covered it all today.
I think we're good. We've got some stuff some guys proposed for next week. Billy, you got anything?
I think I will touch on what Jesse Fox asked in the can you be competitive with middle of the road equipment, just because it really ties into what we just talked about. Absolutely. You can be competitive with low end equipment. The only thing that is required basically is you get comfortable with your equipment.
Yep.
That is really the only thing that you need. Yep. As long as you understand your equipment, you can be just as fast as somebody with high end or faster with high end stuff.
Yep.
You do not need super expensive equipment to be quick.
Yep.
Ask Gregor who to.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, and
Gregor ran on the worst gear in a single monitor.
Yeah.
Mitchie Hoyer was on the worst gear in a single monitor. Glenn McGee was on a single monitor and crappy hardware. I mean, list of champion level drivers on like embarrassing hardware. If you consider this your main hobby, that's embarrassing. But not needed. See, that's the beauty of the whole point. Right? This is why we can do a whole show on just this topic.
Yeah, let's save that for next week.
All right, Billy, you have any community things going on? Any racing going on over the weekend, or anything people should know about?
No. We'll start up doing some dirt stuff the beginning of next year. Just let everybody recover from the holidays. And I will say, since I'm thinking about it now, have a great New Year's to everybody.
Yes.
Because I'll forget later. Because I won't see you all before then.
All right, I have a ton of things going on between now and Monday, so let me blow through these very quickly. Patrons, Wreckfest, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Patron and Simpit Pit Crew friends will be on the channel. You can join us. We'll give out the password, but meet us on Discord at about 8:45. Tomorrow, that's tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Mitchie Hoyer is going to be doing an R Factor 2 community event. Sorry, I don't have all of the details, but you'll find that through our Patreon as well, or on our Discord channel. Mitchie Hoyer Discord channel as well, 11 a.m. Sunday at 12 o'clock, the Simpit Endurance team is going to get some practice in. I'm going to set up a 10-hour practice room, so if you can't be there at noon, I'll probably be there at noon because that's when we normally race the Mazdas. So my brain's already thinking racing on Sunday at noon. And then this I'm very excited about. Monday at 6 p.m., we're going to do figure 8 racing. That's also with the patron guys. And that'll be
fun.
On iRacing.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, we were going to do it last week, but I forgot I wasn't around. This week I will be around. That's New Year's Eve, so some people might have plans, but like me, I'm going to be at home on New Year's Eve, watching the dog, making sure he doesn't lose his mind from fireworks and crazy things. So I'm on dog watch, which means figure 8 racing at 6 p.m. New Year's Eve. So all that going on between now and Monday. Monday there's going to be no news on New Year's Eve. There's not going to be a pit stop Monday, but we will be doing figure 8 racing. We will be back on the air Wednesday edition of the pit stop, and then of course next week's Friday edition of the pit stop with Billy Strange, and who knows what we'll talk about for an hour and a half, but we'll be back.
I got all kinds of stuff I can say to just get people all fired up.
Now, Shaun, for Wreckfest, did you mention that we're going to try and run that in the snow?
The winter Wreckfest. Yes, I heard it slows the cars down. That's what I heard. So I'm not sure if that's true or not, but
find out in the morning.
Yeah, 9 o'clock we'll be on the air. 8:45. Meet us all in the Discord channel, and it's gonna be fun. I'm totally looking forward to Wreckfest tomorrow. So.
Me too.
So that's going to do it
for
this
guys.
one. Yep, thank you, Billy. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Pit Crew, for being here. It's been a blast, as usual. Happy holidays, and get out there and have a happy New Year if I don't see you beforehand. This is the Simpit. I'm Shaun Cole. That's Billy Strange. That's Brandon Waters. And we will see you on the track.
Bye.